Hello everybody. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Writing Rants. I do want to preface this episode by letting you guys know that I had another episode planned, and because of a small technicality, we were unable to put it up today. So I'm going to be doing a last minute video because I still wanted to give you guys something to listen to, something that can help you, something that will give you value. But it will be a little bit shorter than usual, and I just wanted to let you guys know ahead of time. Alright, so since my other video was rejected, I didn't really know what to talk to you guys about today. Didn't quite have much time. It is 2 o'clock in the morning. Yay. Anyhow, so while I was pacing around the office looking for things to talk to you guys about, I came across this book that I've been reading. And I'm not going to tell you the title or the authors because they're quite famous and I really don't want to get sued. So we're just going to talk about some of the issues that are in this novel, and I would like to share this with you so that you can have an understanding of some of the flaws that are made in writing, that even people that are well established as writers, people that are famous, people that have been successful in this field, and that they are mistakes that are still made by those people. So if you see any of these mistakes in your writing, don't feel too bad. Be conscious of it. Try to do your best to work around them. But even the best of us still make these mistakes. So one of the first things about this novel that really just irked me, I can't even say, I haven't even finished the book yet. That's how frustrating it is to me. But the character consistency is atrocious. They're just not consistent. Even our protagonist, her name is Hannah, right? She's described by the author, verbatim, very blunt, she's really intelligent. But then in the next scene she'll do something incredibly ridiculous, just something that someone of her supposed intellect wouldn't do. And it happens numerous times throughout the novel. I'm about halfway through it, and she acts differently in every scene. It almost feels like, this is a collection of vignettes with characters that they just made, that they changed so that they all have the same name, so it seems like a cohesive story. But if you really analyze how the characters speak and how they act from chapter to chapter, it just doesn't seem like the same character. Which might explain why they introduce their characters' first and last name every time that they are mentioned. I'm not kidding. I'm so not kidding. First and last name, every time. Even the protagonist. It's really frustrating. But considering that the characters act so differently from chapter to chapter, I kind of understand why they made that decision. They're like, hey, they might not recognize this character. You know what? I'll just put their full name there. They'll remember their full name, and they'll make the mental connections. But I want to give you one specific example. Just give me a second to find it in the pages here. Okay. Okay, I don't want to waste the time to flip through the pages, but essentially this protagonist is in an executive business meeting, and she's floored by the way that the other person is leading this meeting, the business owner. She's like, wow, that seems kind of shysty, that seems a little underhanded, that seems a bit unfair to your clients. Is that how you run a business? And you're like, Hannah, when I met your character, I was told that you were highly intelligent. Like Stephen Hawking's type intelligence. And you're telling me that you don't understand how the corporate world works? You're telling me that you don't understand that people in positions of power sometimes abuse that power for monetary gain? You're telling me that you don't understand that sometimes you have to be a bit underhanded and use psychology to your advantage? You're telling me that you don't understand this? This, by the way, should have started this out. This book is about, it's a suspense thriller about, finding the lost city of Atlantis. So she's not unaware that there are higher powers at work here, secret society type things. So at this point in the novel, you're like, you want to bang your head against your desk. Like, how many times do we have to hear you be this naive and stupid, even though you were introduced to be a really intelligent character? It's infuriating. And to make matters worse, they added forced tension. Forced romantic tension. Yes, they created this badass assassin-like character who happens to have this past romantic relationship with the protagonist, even though she doesn't seem to understand that there are people out there that kill people for a living, even though she's aware that the man she was sleeping with did that for a living. I'm kind of giving myself a headache just thinking about it, but I don't want to blame it entirely on the book. It might be the extra amounts of coffee that I'm drinking and the fact that it's really early in the morning. I've had a really long day. I've had a couple of asthma attacks too, so I'm a little bit oxygen deprived and delirious, but that's kind of ridiculous, no? And they create these scenes where the characters are interacting, the protagonist and her supposed love interest killer guy, and you're like, how did your relationship even work in the first place? It doesn't seem like, I'm not, at least I am not convinced that they had a romantic relationship at any point. I know that the book wants me to think that. I know that the author said that, and they wrote it out quite plainly numerous times. I'm still not buying it, and that's a problem. So I guess the moral of that story, and that little rant, is that you want to make sure that your characters are staying true to how you introduce them. And now I'm not saying you don't want your characters to have growth. You don't want them to have a character arc. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is you can't have your character act one way and then act a completely different way in the following chapter. Like, there has to be some sort of a reason. The reader has to be able to attribute some sort of growth to that different decision. You know, I feel like a lot of writers, myself included, I've been there. I think I still get there every once in a while, where you write a scene between these two characters simply because you thought about it. You thought it would be awesome. You had a dream about it. That happens to me a lot. I had a dream about a scene, and I really want it to happen, and I write it out, and I'm really proud of myself because I think it came out great, exactly how I saw it in my head. And then the next day, I will read it in conjunction with some of my other chapters, and I'll be like, like my protagonist really wouldn't say that now, would she? She's usually quiet and docile, and now she's raging at this guy without fear. That's unnatural. And you have to be able to have that restraint to just take those scenes out. And I know it hurts, because you really want those scenes in there, but there's some scenes that just aren't meant to be there. Just because it sounds good in your head doesn't mean it's going to work well with the rest of the story that you've crafted. And you want to stay true to the story that you've crafted, because at the end of the day, that's all the reader has to experience your characters and your story. They don't see how your characters acted when you first created them. They don't see the revision stages where you change the way a character acts, how, things that they say, how they look. They don't see that growth, so they can't attribute some of these oddities to anything. They're just like taken aback. That's weird, but I guess I'll just go with it. And you don't want to confuse your readers. You just don't. There's also a lot of telling and not showing, which works in some genres. I don't want to say that you should always show and never tell. It really depends on your genre and what you're trying to accomplish with your story. But in this particular story, it just feels like lazy writing. And it's not a short piece. I want to mention that. It's lengthy, okay? I think it's 400 pages? Yeah, 372 pages. So this is a beast. This is a beast of a book. And yet I still see a lot of just, well, she acts like this, and she felt like this. She felt frustrated and a little bit annoyed. And you're just like, thanks for spelling it out to me. Don't give me any visual clues or walk me through her thought process or anything. No, I love to hear you tell me exactly how I should feel about these characters and what they're doing. And that's what happens a lot in this book, and I think that's what is making it a very difficult read for me, is that you almost feel as you're reading that the author tells you things, and the author just expects you to believe them because you put it on the page, not because they set up a scenario so that you could experience these elements and then experience them that way. They're just, it's basically like your friend who's telling you this elaborate story about this horrible date she went on, and you don't get the other side of the story, so you're kind of just taking her word for it. Oh my god, Amber said that he only had one eye. That's crazy. And you're like, I mean, would Amber have any reason to lie? Maybe, maybe not, but you don't get to see him. You don't get to hear the story of how he lost his eye or anything like that, so you're kind of just like, all right, I guess he's just eyeless. He has one eye. But I know it's a bit of a ridiculous example, and again, partially because of the time of day, all the caffeine, the oxygen deprivation, sleep deprivation. I'm a bit of a mess. But the point of the story is that you want to make sure you keep your characters consistent, and you want to make sure that they act in ways that the reader will not be overly surprised by, that they won't be confused by. You want to make sure that your characters act like people and not like characters. And that's something that I want to go into more detail in another episode, so I can really delve into it, because I see a lot of characters that are only that. They're just characters. They feel like characters. They don't feel like real people. You don't feel like you're reading a real story. You're very much aware that you're reading a book, and I think it's just not a pleasurable way to experience reading, but that's just me. You might enjoy those types of stories. I personally like to get immersed in a story and really believe that certain characters could exist or have exist or will exist. But alright, so I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I'm kind of getting to a point where I'm having a hard time stringing together a coherent set of thoughts, so I think that that's a natural place for us to end our episode for today. I want to thank you guys again for tuning in so faithfully. I will have something better for you next week. Don't forget to check out our website, thewordcount.com, for more creative writing tips, as well as business writing tips for all of you who are so inclined. If you want to be featured on the Writing Rants podcast, you can send us an email through the contact form on the website. And I guess until next week, continue to write on.